Hey guys, I decided to finally review this bad boy. Focus. Yeah. And today we're gonna talk about Stryd power meter for runners. So if you don't know what Stryd power meter is, this is a small kind of like a power meter pod which attaches to your shoe. It's quite easy to wear and connect it to any device, let's say Garmin Phoenix or any other watch like a smartwatch or even your phone, and you just get going and collect the power data. And from my experience, it's quite accurate capturing the data. I'm not gonna go deep into that. I want to kind of like walk you through what sort of results it produces and how you can use that in the decision making and defining your training plans and approach to training. It comes with predefined training plans from 5K to marathon, and it's basing it on our FTP, which is basically power KPI, so a metric which is expressed from different sensors inside this store. So without further ado, I'm gonna jump straight into the actual application to show you what sort of data it spits out and how applicable that is and could be for you as a runner. You can see my desktop, and I'm gonna just go straight into Stryd Power Center. So this is an application, basically a web app with all the data, and I think I collected around maybe a month or 2 month data. You're actually supposed to do a test called a critical power test. I didn't have a chance before I got injured. We're basically supposed to do a test similar to, let's say, lactic threshold test or VO2 max test, where you have some sort of sprint-based intervals and then average maximum critical power. And that is then used like a 100 percentile value, of which you can calculate what zones and where you have to train at. So let's say if my critical power would be 300 watts, maybe 50% of that could be my baseline. I'm not sure about those numbers yet, but let's say presumably if it's like, let's say 50 to 70%, maybe, I don't know, I should be running at maximum 200 watts every run or so and kind of maintain that base in order to improve. But anyhow, as you can see my screen, you can see hello, my username, some sort of calendar on the right. As you can see, I haven't done much in previous 2 weeks. It has just my last run before I think I went to Snap City, which, by the way, one has to predefine in the settings menu with all the different metrics about the athlete, like myself. I define my height, weight, where I'm based, X, Y, Z, and then you have to sort of define what sort of distance is your target one. At the moment it's selected 10 kilometers. You can select 5, 10, half marathon, marathon, and save it. And then at the improvement area, which I'm gonna go in a minute, you basically would see the projections of how ready you are for that and what state and where you can make an informed decision to improve one area over the other. Anyways, but let's go back to Analyze tab, where you basically can see your moving statistics, alive statistics. As you can see, there was some stops, perhaps some sort of traffic signs, no walking whatsoever, trust me. And let's say if it's moving, you can always preview some additional metrics. So let's say I can see my last runs, max power, as well as average moving power in watts, form power, as well as leg springiness and average HR. Basically Stryd, or Stryd should I say, gives you some sort of readiness indicator as well as form indicators. So dependent on your metrics, you always can project and know how ready you are, how stressed you are, and your power outcomes on a map. I'm gonna show that in a minute actually, because that probably gonna make more sense than just me talking about it. But as you can see, it also tracks cadence, distance, and because I integrated it with my Garmin through Garmin Connect app, it kind of like uses all that data. And as you can see here, my last runs, which I synced, are in November, and as you can see, there are quite a few runs there with different RSS and different other metrics involved. As a user, you can also like compare different results, so let's say over time or different runs, but I'm not gonna go deep into that. I'm just gonna go through like main things which I found the most useful, and I think I have enough data right now to kind of make some pattern and some sort of predictive things out of it. So I can see the projection of my run, and as you can see, at some points the wattage increased, and I know for sure that these points are the elevation bits, so let's say running up the hill, especially that one. So as you can see, the projections are quite, it takes it into account basically the speed, the terrain in the way, through elevation and vertical gain. And then you can, of course, isolate some sort of segment of the run and know a bit more detail where exactly, how much power you produce and why. Okay, let me show you one other thing. Okay, here's the December data. So let's see, last one was on 27th when I tested my abductor, and it was still extremely painful. I don't know how I got 5K. But you get some sort of map preview as well, so you can know exactly where you were hammering and at what parts you were cruising, right? So as you can see, all those bits, that was a start, and then the last bits were red, where I was struggling and wasting lots of energy. Anyways, as you can see, like all the other bits are quite interesting. I'm gonna go through the actual KPIs in a minute, but just that's a main view where, let's say, you would land and see your overview of your training. Okay, so now the interesting bit, which is improve up on top, and you can see like a spider diagram with your runner profile. I take it as a readiness to race, because let's say when I started using Stryd, it had like really low percentiles and different values, so I think I started, my metabolic fitness was always quite high, endurance and muscle power were really low, and now they start to improve because I added extra mileage and extra runs. So they started climbing a little bit. So these patterns, it's not a secret that it takes time to build up some data in order to get informed decisions. It doesn't matter what field you are, what product you use. So that's nothing new. But like what I found interesting, and what like I showed to quite a few people who are, let's say, not coaches or not serious endurance athletes, or not serious as myself, let's say, which I'm not crazy, but that training optimizer on right hand side is exactly what was. It's really simplistic view, which shows you exactly what you should be doing. So let's say explaining that, hey, based on that projection on your readiness, you should be doing, for example, aerobic threshold tempo runs more often, or introducing a bit longer runs or so. Maybe your long runs are not really long runs. Maybe, you know, instead of 10 miles, you should do a half marathon every weekend or so. So as you can see, there are quite a few suggestions, which are actionable data is always better than just plain data, because not everybody know how to read, especially from get-go, and if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, this is quite perfect, I would say. So There are always improvement areas, of course, but I guess based on my 10K running profile, these are quite make sense. Now the trends. Ignore the last bits of the running trends because that's where MIA. As you can see, December 27th was when I tried to approach my running, and I don't know, it just felt really bad. But just from the beginning, when I got Stryd from November, my trends started to climb because I started to collect more data over time every day, and as you can see here, there is nothing, the trend just goes down. Now, the tool itself is quite intuitive, so they give you some sort of indicator of where you're at. So let's say if you have 30 to 50 RSS, you're quite ready for a 10K race and so forth. But you know, the bigger the number, naturally the more ready you are. And of course you can click through and see different, for example, muscle endurance, and that's how the trend would inform the spider diagram on top. So as you can see, let's say that here in the bottom bit, that's how low in the beginning was my muscle power down below, and then kind of like expanded over time because I got more data and more mileage, and on average that's how it's projected for my 5K, 10K performance, right? So you can always observe and see where you're at and how ready you are. And I like that they explain exactly with the tooltips what they mean by that trend. So you can read in and know exactly what state you are. So let's say currently that's like, it's a bit on top of its head, but let's say it's 150 trend for muscle endurance, and then you can kind of like predict where that would land you. Now, the interesting bit, I love visual data, and here it is. It's quite interesting to see how many runs and where most of the runs are done. So let's say if you're following 80-20 principle by Matt Fitzgerald, it's quite easy to know that, okay, you spend majority of your time running in, let's say, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and that quite, you know, like majority of runs should be done in a slow state, just so you don't break down and you actually improve. You push yourself just a little bit instead of just going all out, hammering out into the injury. So I like to see exactly where I'm at and what the data says. So as you can see, let's say majority of my runs, I'm trying to find that number I just saw. Where is it now? It's 13 runs or so, but it was around zone 2, zone 1. Here, 13. So that's, I guess, my biggest one, where the real power is 290 watts and duration is 4 minutes when I reach that power. But as you can see, the split here of my training compared to my plan of what they should be doing is it tells you exactly where you are at. And let's say I think I'm overspending time in zone 2. Perhaps I should add a bit more speed intervals, which kind of makes sense, especially with I'm, you know, broken down right now. But everything is explained, so it's quite user-friendly. I guess it takes time to understand how it relates with everything else on these graphs, but I find it really fascinating just to look up every once in a while. So let's say when I got to November, I looked every week, and then now start to look every month. But once I'm gonna get back, hopefully in a few weeks into running, I'm gonna be observing it every 2 weeks or so, getting ready for a marathon. Which reminds me, I need to change the settings, so it kind of like takes all the data into consideration and projects a bit different profiles of what we should be aiming for. Training load, which is last bit in the improvement section, and you can see the stress, which is, I think it's a bit simplistic because it gives you the projections based on what you spend and how often you spend it at. So let's say stress in first week was 447 RSS, and then it kind of climbed, and then it went down when it felt really bad, so I took off some volume out of the training plan, and then lastly 23 is just most recent. But as you can see the stress based on distance, time in different zones spent, and so forth. As you can see, I spent a lot in zone 1, but that was also because Stryd takes into consideration walking too, meaning that if you don't clip off of your shoe the actual pod, it kind of takes into consideration even if you walk, which is naturally zone 1. And I found that it's a bit tricky to make it stop tracking, because it's quite sensitive and smart, which is a good thing in a way, but let's say I had it in my backpack and I was going from work straight into running after work, and I walked, I don't know, maybe extra a few miles, and that got taken into account when tracking the running. So I think it's the best ways to actually keep it at home and then put it on just before run and basically run with it, and take it off and just keep it aside, unless you're gonna come up with maybe another version where I can actually maybe click in and, you know, make it active on demand rather than do it automatically. So that's the overview of Stryd so far, and so far how I like it. You also have some leaderboards. As you can see, I'm not even appearing anymore. I was 200 something in the leaderboard based on where I'm aiming to be, and weekly RSS. As you can see, some guys here totally mental. Shout out to them. Crazy and really great. Weekly RSS 2000 something compared to mine, which was 400, meaning I guess these guys are doing at least 60 miles relative to what it seems like, but I guess I'm just pulling that out of my ass. But anyways, what else did what else? I wanted to also check into the training plans, because that's something which is relevant for users, at least who are beginner or a bit more advanced. Most of us already use like Training Peaks. They have different plans already in place or have their own coaches, so that might not be relevant. But I find, you know, that holistic approach where you use some sort of product and it has some sort of documentation of how to use RFTP, let's say, which is a power KPI, or all the other metrics here displayed in the system, that it's just so much easier to adapt and improve when you have those different bits. So Stryd offers some sort of training plans which you can choose based on the distance, and as with other training plans, again, as I mentioned before, you have the main KPI, which is critical power, and then based on that you kind of try to break it down into different runs and split it into zones. And let's say if mine was 10k, I ran that's probably on that lower end. Then you get some sort of progression and some sort of plan which you can adapt and use. And as you can see here, again, you have some sort of data visualization which allows you to see exactly where you would spend most of your time, and I like that because you know exactly where the intensity is going to increase. But so far so good. I'm looking forward to getting back in business and training again. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have any questions, please leave your comments down below, and share with friends who are considering to buy Stryd, and maybe we need to make, I don't know, informed decision if it's worth it or not, because I was looking so much and reading into it and then try to decide if that 199 is actually worth this one. But so far I think it is, and I love the like data projections and data information to actually make more informed decisions and understand how your body is actually responding to different stress over time. So this is pretty damn good.